Daniel Leibovitz, Wyncote, Pennsylvania, and New York City.
My name is Mooney Schweig, and I'm from Berkeley.
Norman Itzkowitz from Princeton, New Jersey.
My name is Kittle Leibovitz, and I'm from Philadelphia.
My name is Rivi Guro, and my husband Henry and I are here from Toronto.
I'm Jason Volpe-Leroy, and I come from Monroe, New York.
I'm Debbie Leibovitz.
Andrea Michaels.
Alan Jacobs from San Francisco.
We are the Phillipsons. I'm Elliot, my wife Arlene.
I think it's strange that two people can produce like 400 people from one marriage. So I'm glad we've contributed to the population explosion of the world.
So much coming from all over the world and the North America and everywhere for coming here, and I think everybody deserves a big applause just for coming. Okay, everybody knows that they're descendants from Ephraim Ticktin, and Ephraim had 12 children, and 7 of them are represented here tonight.
When this Ephraim Ticktin's first wife died, and he remarried, all of the children from the first wife took their mother's maiden name, which was Rittenberg. And so that there's a whole branch here that descended from this Rittenberg. So the name Rittenberg works its way through, but not the name Ticktin. But my understanding was that when their father remarried, the children of the first wife, who was a Rittenberg, objected to the second marriage. So they, in protest, took their mother's maiden name. Well, the other thing that's interesting is that the names, several of the names, particularly the Hebrew names, repeat every second or third generation. Because, of course, they wouldn't name after a living relative. So there's several Shana Mindels, which was one of Ephraim Ticktin's daughters, who was my mother's grandmother. My mother's named Shana Mindel. And I met one of the other second or third cousins whose grandmother's named Shana Mindel. There's several Ephraims.
Are there Ephraims in there?
There are several Ephraims. There's several Rachamas. There's several names that just keep repeating themselves.
The story that I know that was handed down through the family was that my grandmother's father married a second time. One wife was Ticktin, one was Rittenberg. In Europe, if there was only one son in a family, they wouldn't take him for the army. But if there was more than one son, they would. So therefore, these people sort of outwitted them. Some of the boys kept the Rittenberg name, and some kept the Ticktin name, so they weren't touched.
I like her story. And it is.
I know that they came from a place called Calvary, which was in Lithuania. I know it was a small town. I used to hear about the houses on either side of the street. I used to hear how Uncle Morris, my father, were in the Hebrew school in the Cheder. And on a hot summer's day, they were sitting there and just wanting to be outside, and their teacher was teaching them, and slowly he would fall asleep. And the boys would just run out and go swimming into the river behind the classroom.
You saw Fiddler in the Roof, the beer, what do they call it? They call it a shank. She'd sell liquor to the peasant. They weren't persecuted though. She was lucky they weren't. But they lived a hard life. They didn't have anything. It was very difficult. And when they came across, of course, they came steerage, and that was awful. So when they got here, they had to be deloused. The men used to come to here and disappear. come to America and they would disappear, and they would leave their wives. And when my grandmother started to come over, she didn't exactly know where she was coming to. She finally found him, and then of course she got pregnant right after.
Well, most of them left when they were very young.
They didn't all come to America one by one. They all together. They came in groups of 2 or 3. They came with other, not only their close relatives, but they came with cousins. 2 came, 3 came. And
my mother used to recount the fact that we came from a family of scholars and rabbis, although her father was her grandfather, that would be. Her mother's father was a very educated man, and I think he was a merchant. You know, Lithuanian Jews felt they were a little bit of a notch above most others. It was true. They had a broader education. Theirs was a bit more secular. They included, as my grandfather told me, although they had a good Hebraic education in the yeshivas, they also included secular subjects, including science, which most of the other yeshivas outside of Lithuania and Russia did not.
Tell my grandfather, Aaron Wershoff, was actually a Hebrew teacher. In fact, in Edmonton, he was the principal of the first Hebrew school. The oldest was Eli Wershoff, who was a family physician in Edmonton. He was the first Jewish doctor in the city of Edmonton. And the youngest was Max Wershoff, who lived in Ottawa, and he was a diplomat with the Canadian government and ambassador, several portfolios.
Her mother was the first Jewish woman to graduate from university.
My dad had arrived in this country in approximately 1906 on the Kaiser Augusta Victoria. Had departed from Bremerhaven and landed in New York City on Ellis Island. He remembered and told us clearly his memories of traveling by carriage from Kalvaria, Lithuania, to Bremerhaven, Germany. He and his mom were with one brother and his 2 younger sisters, which had to be Minnie, and he referred to an infant, which had to be Tilly. And they needed to stay in Germany a couple of weeks before they were able to embark on their journey because he had trouble with his eyes and they were afraid of being rejected in Ellis Island. So he received treatment from a doctor, first in Berlin and then in Bremerhaven. They left on the Kaiser Augusta Victoria. They traveled in steerage. They carried their bundles tied up. His mom tried to take an oil painting with them from Kalvaria, but it was destroyed in the passage, and remembers eating pickles. And at the time the ship landed in Ellis Island, he remembered clearly everyone running to the top of the ship and looking out and seeing the Statue of Liberty. They went through the customs inspection without any difficulty, then took the ferry to Manhattan, and his dad, Wolf Costin, was waiting for them. He went on a subway ride that he clearly remembers, and they arrived in Harlem, where Wolf was already living with the older brothers who had arrived earlier. That the streets were very wide and they had a very comfortable apartment. He remembers that his mom did not want to leave Lithuania because she was doing fairly well. She was running a saloon and she got along very well with her neighbors, and Jew and Gentile got along very well, and she was respected and was doing well in the saloon and did not want to leave for the United States for an uncertain future. Wolf was involved in a liquor business, and they kept destroying the business, and then a decree was sent out that Jews could not own a liquor business, and he became a salt seller. And at that point he realized, and Avi was confirming the same story, at this point Wolf realized that there was no future there. He had clear memories of growing up those years in Kalvaria, and the synagogue, which he remembered with the round ceiling, with no pillars, and how religious his family was. His mother was very well educated, which was unusual at that time, but her father was intent that everyone in the family, and especially the daughters, received an education, that they would be as intelligent and capable as any of the men.